I'm ready. You ready? Are you guys ready?
I think so. Shantae, you good?
I am good, yes. And when you
Okay.
guys begin having your interview, I will cut my camera off.
Okay. Okay. Or you can, either way.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
easy.
I
I'm
wouldn't.
easy.
I wouldn't. I would just stay on.
Okay.
I'm easy. I'm easy.
All right.
I've had some critique because I've been focused on Black men primarily.
Mm-hmm.
And, I paused with it for a second and then I got a little unapologetic about it, I guess, because even, in that instance, it feels like there's value there. There's some value sometimes in just having like,
Mm-hmm.
a little Black male celebration. So,
Mm-hmm.
but it's all good. Okay. So,
Well, let me just say that's not unique to you. I think that is a struggle all the way around. Uh, and my advice would be to balance that puppy out.
yes.
But
I know, so
you
here's the
know,
thing. Here's the thing. Like I've been in, church leadership and in corporate leadership.
yeah.
I've been the diversity, like the culture person, like the Shantae in large organizations, and I'm super familiar with equity and with
Mm-hmm.
creating space where everybody's celebrated and centering the margins. I'm really familiar with it. And I think if there's anything that feels exclusive a little bit. Like when I get it. I do get that there's a little bit of people might be like, wait, it's really probably just my bias, my own desire to
Right.
connect, So I
But
take your counsel. I take your counsel. I
well,
do.
let
I'm
me just
extremely
say this,
blessed.
and this is not part of the interview. This is just kind of chopping it
No,
up.
no, no. Please,
I
yes.
will say, African American men and women, but men
Yeah,
to
Mm-hmm.
a larger degree,
yeah,
they pull out the foul card on you real quick when they feel like you've crossed into an
yeah,
area of you know uh, unclarity. Let me just say
yeah,
that,
yeah,
and
yeah,
they'll call you out like super quick,
yeah,
as everyone else has wide berth, as they say.
yeah,
They can stumble and misunderstand and
yeah,
be confused. We don't get that luxury,
yeah,
and so
yeah,
if you're not getting it from inside, you're getting it from
yeah,
outside and
yeah.
everywhere else, man. So it's not just you, it's
Yes.
everyone. It's the nature of being an African American male,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah,
but
yeah.
it's all good. So tell me more about what we're doing and what you're trying to
Yes,
accomplish and all
I'll
that.
let you know. I'll let you know. So, Fine 40, what this is a project to highlight Black excellence in San Diego. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, full stop. So it started last year with the death of Ahmaud Arbery.
Mm-hmm.
And it did come on the heels of me having a lot of these conversations in majority spaces about greater levels of representation around your boardroom tables and your executive leadership tables, and kind of coming to the end of that for me, coming to a place where I was like, man,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm kind of tired of that. And then also, recognizing at a level kind of like my own fault in largely being in those spaces myself all the time. So I'm like a
Mm-hmm.
biotech dude in North County. I live in Poway.
Mm-hmm.
I often say, my mama's white, my wife is white. Like I'm a comfy, assimilated brother. You know what I mean? Like I know how to do all of that and be in those spaces, and I could stay out there and just be
Right.
comfy and fine. And
Right.
well, I say be comfy and fine. It's not. It's not. I'm not entirely comfy and fine. I think is what is real. So part of this is me mapping myself the topography of Black excellence and influence and movement in this town. So to add on to it, okay, so one is me being disgruntled in majority spaces, but then the other is, okay, what, I've been here since 2002. I plan to be here, God willing, until it's all done, and would like to be helpful with the levels of privilege that I have. So when I think about that, anybody that I ask about, okay, who's moving in this town? Like who, like from a Black perspective,
Mm-hmm.
what are the priorities and who are the people that push for real? So it takes me to the Boule, It takes me into the San Diego Black Chamber, it takes me into the NAACP, it takes me into all these little spots, but I have yet to really sense what's going on, to be real honest with you. So this is a little bit of a survey in that regard. I move in arts spaces, education spaces, business, healthcare, faith spaces, and money and politics, like banking, finance, and who's, trying to get elected, to try to understand kind of who has their finger on the pulse of the things that are most central to Black folks in San Diego. So you can consider 540 a bit of a survey and at the same time a celebration of Black excellence in San Diego. That was long-winded, but does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand it. I understand. I guess I'm just trying to understand the final product and when would how.
Oh yeah. So you'll have full. Yeah. You'll have time to take a look.
Yeah, sometimes yes or no. Go into this black hole and it's like you don't hear about them until
No. So I'll be communicative. I'll be clear. So right now, I've interviewed the ex-CEO of Jack in the Box, the current CEO of the only Black-led pharmaceutical company in town, and little rappers on the block, a whole lot of different folks. There's like 16 or 17 out there right now. There's 4 in line kind of in front of you at the moment. And so you'll kind of be in that process, but within the month, I would say they would be out. I do a lot of my kind of sprinkling and chatting in the Instagram space, but the final full interview ends up in YouTube. But I will be very like, here's what it is. You reserve the right at any time to say, nah, or yay, so don't feel obligated in any way. I try to be, as integrous and, like I say, celebratory and helpful as I can. So you should come away feeling celebrated, really, and recognized. That's my heartfelt, this is not about Matthew Mitchell. This is about Rudy Johnson being in San Diego for a long time doing good work. That's what this is really about.
Well, I first of all, I applaud you. I think anyone who's asking that question about where Black leadership is in San Diego is going to be hard pressed to really go to one individual, one area and find it's collective as I'm sure, and it's fragmented and it's disjointed at best. And to be quite honest with you, the folks that really have the juice are probably the most quiet. So they're kind of invisible, right? And so that's what you're going to find. The folks that are the loudest in the room, they really don't have a lot of juice.
Yes.
So
that's what I'm trying to find out. I'm trying to make the unseen seen, so to speak. Let's get it. We can start right from there.
Yeah, let's go right now. And I love Lenny, man. Lenny is my guy. So yeah, he's good people. So
yes. So welcome to 540. As I say, this is a project to highlight Black excellence in San Diego. And when I ask around, your name comes up from multiple different angles. So I see you're nearly a San Diego native. It doesn't always say that it says you spent most of your time here, but I have a feeling you came here from somewhere else. So I'm curious to hear about that. But run one of the, if not the largest nonprofit of your kind, like this side of the Mississippi. I've heard someone say something like that to me. So I'm just curious to hear what brought you here, what you're up to, and what your hopes are for what's possible, particularly with the Neighborhood House Association, but also just for you as a Black man in San Diego. So how about we just start at the beginning? What brought you to San Diego?
So technically, I'm close to being as native as you can get, and I'll give you the long version of it to understand it. I'm a 3rd generation San Diegan.
Ooh. My
parents were 20 and 18 respectively, and my dad was in the Air Force. He left to go to Anchorage, Alaska on assignment from San Diego. And in my mother's 7th month, of her term. She, without consulting with my dad, got on an airplane against the doctor's will and blessing and flew to Anchorage, Alaska to be with my father and said, I'm having this baby in your presence. And I was born in Anchorage, Alaska. And the assignment lasted about a year and a half.
Yeah.
And they came back to San Diego. So I came back to San Diego at a year and a half. So technically, you know, if you're splitting hairs, I'm not a native, is what I'm told. Yeah. But I'm still a third generation San Diegan. You know, Jackson Elementary, Horseman Junior High, Crawford High School, didn't leave the block. Wow. Grew up in so my early part of my life, I grew up on 31st and Ocean View. I don't know if you know that area, but it's in the hood. And you know, my parents, my dad worked for SDG&E as a laborer. Mom was sort of a stay home mother. At the time we were on, back then they called it commodities welfare, you know, where the big cans of peanut butter, the block cheese, you know. And so my dad and my mother made a pact that this was not the life they wanted. They both enrolled at City College, got their junior college degree, and then went to San Diego State after 2 years, got their undergraduate degree, and stayed at San Diego State, and they both earned a master's in social work. So we moved on up like Wheezy. And
Jefferson's.
That's right.
Yeah.
And went over to Oak Park. I don't know if you're familiar with that area, right up on Kathleen Place at the top of the hill by Holy Spirit Church. You know where Holy Spirit Church is? You know where the Choya's operation yard is for the city of San Diego?
No. You're gonna educate me.
Brother, we got to go for a ride. Help me. Go for a ride when we're done with this. We're gonna get you in the car and drive you around San Diego.
Please help me. Please help me.
So anyway, I grew up on that hill, and literally it was like the Black Hollywood of San Diego. You know, they called it the Black Mecca of San Diego because to this day, I still think they have some of the finest homes in San Diego.
Oak Park?
Oak Park at the top. Now, not the bottom. At the bottom is Euclid and 54th and all of that. That's the bottom.
Okay.
But there's kind of a steep hill that rises up there. Like it's just adjacent to.
So you take me from Euclid and Imperial. So Euclid and Imperial, if I get there coming from the freeway,
so you're gonna come north.
Okay.
Drops
Euclid, down.
Right, and then go up.
Yeah.
You're gonna pass 94.
Okay, on the other side of 94. Okay.
You're gonna roll to your right.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
And then that's when it splits off to 54th Street, there.
Okay, got you. Yes.
And then maybe 3 or 4 lights in.
Yeah.
You're in the Oak Park area, but at the top of the hill is where we grew. We grew up almost in the College Grove area, but it was the borderline.
Okay.
Okay. So that's where we spent the majority of my junior high school years. And then I left San Diego on an athletic scholarship. I was a football player and went to Texas Southern University and earned a civil engineering degree from Texas Southern. And then came back home and went to work for the city of San Diego right out of college in their engineering department. In fact, I was telling someone today on a call that I spent 9 years and 6 months at the city, various jobs, became the council liaison for the city manager, and then got assigned to the convention center expansion project. And we built the convention center, the expansion, I should say, the first one, the one and only expansion that ever happened. And, you know, I tell that story for a lot of reasons, you know, a lot of pride in the building. But the thing that, again, the silent piece we talk about power and juice.
Mm-hmm.
That building represents probably 10 significant African Americans that were responsible for bringing that to fruition. So the CEO at the time was Carol Wallace, my mentor. She was the president CEO, and I was working the project. We had another young lady who was working on our team on the city side. Carol had a few African Americans. There were some consultants that were African Americans, about 10 of us that were really the core nucleus of the think tank. There were about 30 people in that think tank. So we're about 1/3 of the think tank, met regularly, that built that expansion. And folks don't really understand that was, I say it was built by Black folks, which is a huge history lesson in itself. Left that project, and Carol hired me to come to work for her. Ended up being her general manager. And then came to work 15 years ago for the neighborhood house. So I say all that to kind of give you that variety. I'm from the hood, but educated. Got a master's from San Diego State. So I came back home, got my master's. I'm a Toastmaster. Every box you have to check for Black. When you find a successful Black person, there probably are about 30 things that individual had to do to get where most, white counterparts can get, coming out of undergrad or something like that. So it's a very interesting scenario. But anyway, I'm as native as you can get.
Yes. So then, to the topic of what's seen and unseen,
right?
Who is it that inspired you or continues to inspire you? You say Carol Wallace kind of within your vocational lane, but in terms of San Diego,
right,
in general, who has stood out for you?
Well, no doubt, the godmother of them all is Carol. That's my professional mother. I nothing I wouldn't do for her personally, professionally, that I had under my control. And I'm sure vice versa. If I called her with something, I still seek advice and counsel, treat her with great respect. Lenny is a great brother. I met Lenny recently, right before he decided to retire. And we spent a few years just, really just chopping it up.
Have you seen his son's band?
Man, he sends me the little YouTube video.
Yeah, man. Yeah, they're trying to get it.
Yeah, I love it. So absolutely, man. They're doing their thing,
And he's not native, so I don't know if I gave him that much of a hard time about that. He's a kind of a transplant. Most people in San Diego are transplants like me. I'm from Lompoc, California, if you know where that is. It's like a maximum security penitentiary up on the Central Coast that my dad worked at, and that's that's where I came up. And I came down here for work. A lot of people come for work or for a relationship or something. But are you native, Shantae? You are. See?
Yes, I am. Mm-hmm.
You are. So from both of you, as native folks, you're saying, Carol, I'm still trying to figure out, like I said at the top, right? So whether it's the 4th district or what kind of traditionally has been the North Star. So maybe I'll even go back to Oak Park. Are there personalities that stood out as having kind of created waves? Like, there was one dude, I interviewed Chris Williams when he was running for Lemon Grove mayor, and he was talking about Reese Jarrett and Tony Young, and folks that kind of stand out for him anyway, as a young entrepreneur trying to come up and find his way.
My dad was in the business, that again, that's another story. My father was the president and CEO of the San Diego Urban League.
Oh, wow.
And he, in the early 80s, 83 through about 87,
Mhm.
He was also the deputy director to my predecessor. So he left the neighborhood house and took the job at the Urban League. He has since passed away, but so I kind of grew up serving in the movement, you know, kind of thing. So Dr. Carey was another one who was my predecessor. You know, Charles Lewis was a councilman, young councilman back then, before he passed away. So, but I tell you, I got my fighting spirit from Texas Southern. You know, I mean, HBCUs, man, they breed you that way. You know, you can't leave a HBCU and just be regular in life. You know, it just doesn't go together. So,
how did you make that decision? What fueled that decision?
Very simple. It was the only full athletic scholarship I had on the table, man.
Got it.
Yeah.
So coming away from that, you know, I say the same thing. When I went to UC Davis, not by any means an HBCU, but they had a summer enrichment, you know, the STEP program for Black and brown folks. And I thought my GPA was so good. You know, my dad was like, no, I think maybe you should go. And I went and it changed my whole, you know, I was with a lot of Bay Area Black folks and had a whole different perspective on life, literally from that experience. So coming from San Diego and getting kind of tossed into PSU, did that shift things for you, or what? You know, because I even see to this day, I think you were on different boards that have kind of an African-centered flavor to it. Did you?
And some white ones now. Let's be clear, because I've tried to be.
Come on, man, it's okay. So you don't have to apologize. Don't apologize, Rudy.
My team knows how sensitive I am to that.
Come on, man.
But that's a great observation. And I could tell you did your homework.
Yes.
I could tell you did your homework because, you know, a lot of folks don't pay attention to that. And when you look at the balance, so you see EDC, Chamber of Commerce, and then you're going to see, you know, something like Urban League or you know, you'll see, you know, the Congressional Black Caucus Institute Council. So, and I'm always struggling with how much do I help Black causes versus being in the conversation at the white table, at the majority table, because I'm that guy or girl, you know, whoever it is. It's not always Rudy Johnson, but my
I apologize. My printer is the printer for the house, so if it gets a little bit louder, someone downstairs has decided to print something right now. so I hope it's okay. Go on, I can hear you though.
No, I was just saying in you know, and I'll give you a recent example of this. What I try to do is hear, listen, access the resources in the majority community and tag that with the need of the underserved community, because that's where I come from. I'm always doing that thing. And I tell you, the San Diego Foundation, they have a fund, and we're sitting on that fund advisory and finally married that up with a cause that's near and dear to our heart, which is youth fellowship programming, hiring youngsters. We were able to, you know, find resources to kind of expand that program. But that's what it is. It's being, you know, it's playing spades, but then I can play golf too. You know what I mean? And I do them both.
Hey, as this in between personality you're looking at right here, yes, I do understand.
So you get it.
Yes, I understand. But you know, it's funny that double consciousness is, Du Bois calls it, you know, of having a code switch and live in two spaces. You know, it can be, there you go. It can be tiring. And I think that's in part what's bringing me here to you, to having to kind of do that. I saw a Dave Chappelle interview one time and talking about that, you know, having to switch up when he's in different spaces. And yeah, I suppose that's the way that I mean, to be Black in this country, you know, Black folks are 13% of the country. That's in some ways, that's part of it. You're gonna have to cross that bridge
Right.
you know, in some kind of way. Is that seamless for you? Does it cause you any challenge, or do you feel comfortable in that lane brokering between conversations?
Absolutely, I do. And you know, that's why I was telling you about Godmother Carol Wallace. You
Yeah.
know, I was a raw talent when I got to her. You know, I was quick-witted. I was I don't want to say intelligent. I mean, you know, I brought some math skills to the table. I knew the square root of 16, you know, coming through the door, that kind of thing. But she taught me how to be a gentleman, how to be a professional, how to listen. She taught me how to open the hood and understand budget management. She taught me how to manage an entire portfolio of an operation, right? Labor relations management, stuff like, you know, just things, board interface, political acumen. Oh, that's when you start getting polished, you know. You can be a real rough commodity, you know. Sometimes you're too rough to even be in the room. Brilliant, but you're clumsy all at the same time. So she taught me how to smooth out some of those edges, you know, and I'll tell you, that taught me to sit in those rooms. And when it was my turn to talk, because I didn't always raise my hand, I said something, and they would always look, because they would say, well, how does he know that much on this subject? We're supposed to be the ones that know about this stuff. It's like, no. It's just, I never said anything. I've been here for a year in the room, but you've never noticed me, right? But when you say something, it's profound. Right? And so I've kind of learned how to, in 15 years, man, I mean, that's kind of what we've tried to do, is be quiet, but big in our community, but without saying a whole bunch, you know?
So tell me, so that's a great pivot. Can you tell me, for those, including me, that are new to Neighborhood House, I see that big old budget, but I don't know exactly what you all do. So can you frame it for me a little bit?
So we are a continuum of care model consisting of 26 now programs that range from Black infant health, and we kind of take you along that model. And our goal is 25 years from now, the kids that we bring into the world healthy through Black infant health and bring them through Head Start, et cetera. We want to hire those kids into our workforce 25 years from now. Now, I'm a realist. I understand I may not be around. I may be around, but I probably won't be around when the majority of those kids start feeding back into our workforce. But what I've done is build the infrastructure to get that process going. And we've been managing that process quietly. And then we have the wraparound services for the family behind the scenes as that kid moves through our continuum of care model. Now, that's who we are programmatically. But let me tell you who we are economically. Economically, we represent 805 full-time equivalents or full-time jobs. 805. We are about $200 million a year when you round up in the local economy. So we're about 1.9, no, I'd say we're about $1.5 million every 2 weeks in payroll revenue to the San Diego economy. So every 2 weeks, Neighborhood House is dropping $1.5 million into the local economy through those 800 employees that, oh, by the way, are employing 75% San Diegans that are either Latinx or African American. So that's who we are as an economic engine on top of our mission. And again, you know, you don't have to come in the room saying all of that. Just like you said, I really didn't understand what you guys did. Now, you know, maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. You know, my folks in my personal life tell me it's bad. If you've been there 15 years and people don't know who you are, it's bad. Me, I look at it a different way. I've been there 15 years. When you do the math, $100 million times 15 years, what's that number? No, what is that number? I'm asking for real. That's 1.5 billion or something.
Yeah.
I've been able to navigate $1.5 billion in my short career into the San Diego area and keep 800 folks employed the last 15 years. See, that's the piece that quietly, you know, Carol would pull me inside and say, that's BTS right there. That's what I'm talking about. This is what I meant to you, you know, 25 years ago when I first met you. This is what I meant to try and relay to you about, you know, building the bridge, because she was the original. She built the bridge over to the neighborhood house, and I'm hoping someone else, when I leave the scene, they'll build a bridge wherever they're going.
That's fantastic. I appreciate that education, actually. I appreciate knowing that. So what's the how are you all measured? What's the, you know, outside of that, which is fantastic stats, but in terms of programmatically, what is it that you measure yourselves against?
So each one of those 25 different programs have different funding sources. So if we're on a federal level, most of our funding source is Head Start. They have like 2,000 different, you know, I would say measurements that you have to hit a day to be in compliance with that, you know, everything from health and safety to cognitive development to nutrition requirements. So, I mean, I can go on and on. I don't want to bore you with the detail, but then you have mental health programs. You got to meet some of those mental health targets. Nutrition, you know, we serve 6,000, well, before the pandemic, let me back up. We were serving 6,000 meals a day before the pandemic hit.
Wow.
And so, you know, you had all these things going on at one time, but our overall measurement was, and I'm always asking, you know, my teammates, you know, where are we in bringing those children through our continuum of care, and how many have we placed back into our organization? And in my short time, there's been like 3 or 4 individuals that we've hired back into our organization. And to me, one is great because, you know, I was on another panel the other day. I said, we invest $63,000 per child on this continuum, right? On the front end. So imagine, let's say 18 years, we're investing $63,000. Now, if that child does everything he or she's supposed to do, go to school, because we got them on path, they graduate or go to trade school, they get their certificate, they go to work, and assuming they're making $70,000 or better in the San Diego market, which is not a stretch, at a 24% tax rate, on average, people work between 25, 30, maybe even 35 years. Let's take 25. The ROI on that 63,000 being taxed by the federal government for 20, 25 years is north of $700,000. So that's a 6-to-1 return on our investment. So that's one child. Now I haven't even, you know, let's say we get 10. Let's say we're lucky enough to get 20 of them back. You know, you just do the math. And so
So
I just believe, I believe it's a good investment.
Yeah, you were right in my wheelhouse right now, or my lane of interest. I'll say. So this economic impact thing. So I sometimes get in a knot a little bit around the fact that we are here in the third largest biotech hub in the country, after Boston and the Bay Area, and have, to my mind, nearly no connectivity between, let's just say, the Port District, or Black San Diego, and the biotech environment, which is all about healthcare and all kinds of opportunities for Black folks to in a self-empowered way, harness all the dollars and things that are being generated in that same space. There's a whole lot of venture money and drug discovery money and biotech in general money up here. That, to me, there's a gap between the kids that you're talking about and an appreciation and awareness of how to access those resources. So I'm kind of curious, and I was talking to another person, Shara Fissler, who runs the Oceans Discovery Institute. You may know her, who treats, I think she's focused on City Heights neighborhood, and she tracks kind of these school sheds that she calls them. So if a watershed is how water reaches the ocean, these school sheds, she treats each high school and all the downstream, or maybe it's upstream schools that feed into that high school, as her kind of jurisdiction, and she tracks in a similar way kind of the economic impact and how many touches she can get at the elementary school all the way up to the high school, and then hopes to employ those people in science and technology. So I was saying all that, with my scientific bias a little bit, but I'm curious as to how you all organize. Do you track along those kind of lanes? Like, how many folks are we sending into public service, finance, healthcare? Do you get that? Do you get actually up that close to where folks eventually get employed, or do you just track to 18 and then assume that they'll be having an impact and feed into the tax base in the San Diego area? How far do you track them? Is my question.
So so it's a great question. We're trying to track them back into our organization right now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So if they, go to school to become, let's say, a teacher, we'd love to hire them in the classroom in the future. Now, to your point, if they go away to school and come back and teach somewhere else, we're not necessarily aware of that. So we're starting to have those broader conversations with folks because we want to know where our kids are landing. But let me say this too, we're losing a lot of African-American children to the competition out there. Those other cities are kicking our tail. Keeping our kids in those cities because A, the cost of living is lower, and B, they have some culture to offer those kids. There's nothing here in San Diego to offer our children, and so we're losing them, unfortunately.
But this is man, we can talk about this for a long time, because that thing, I feel like we export, I'm imported myself, so I'm one to talk, I guess, I'm not a native like that, but I do want to stay and see that ecosystem that develop, where folks they come out, they can be trained here, work here, and then go back and kind of feed it here at a local level, and have that ripple effect that you're talking about, not just in the tax base necessarily back to the feds, to DC, but also just here in terms of, what do the trolley stops look like going to, or what does the corner of Euclid and Imperial look like,
But brother, let me tell you, that's federal money, because see, here's where I had to be educated. Once they drop it into the federal coffer, it then gets broken up. Some of it gets sent back to the state.
No, I understand. No, I do understand. No, I do understand.
Eventually it all becomes no pro rata share of that 24 cents on the dollar. We may get 2 cents of that. Right?
So I do understand that.
And it's all infrastructure development, right? So it's all good.
So the infrastructure development, that's an interesting one. And I do want to have the kind of Reese Jarrett conversation. He was a new name to me. Developer in San Diego, or was. I'm not exactly sure what he's up to right now, but I'm always curious about who gets involved in kind of community development, and where are the trolley stops, and how are we, masterminding folks lived in spaces and environments. Do you get involved in much of that, kind of housing development? Because when I saw Neighborhood House, to be honest with you, I thought it had more to do with development of space and buildings than it did bodies and minds, which is the way that I understand it now.
The short answer is no, we don't do a lot of housing development, but
okay.
I am on a statewide affordable housing board of directors because we know there is a connection between the children and families that we're serving and the need for affordable housing. And so, I'm trying to learn that particular craft so that we can bring it to a neighborhood house.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So when you were saying this idea of polish, there's an initiative. Man, I could go in a few different directions with this. Let me see if I can make it clear. Polish and preparation to sit at board tables or in boardrooms. That training and education is often based on access, right? So you had access to Carol. And Carol put you on in a couple of different ways, right? Okay, I see it. And not to mention your pops, which is a beautiful thing. But for folks that don't have similar swim lanes, what is when you mentor downstream, how do you coach people into that understanding? Or what for you are key tools you need to have in the bag? So you said there are about 30 different boxes you need to check. Me too, I've done plenty of table topics and Toastmastering myself. So I feel you there. But what are your guiding principles for people wanting to sit in the chairs that you sit in?
Well, let me just say this, and I have this argument, with my diversity and inclusion liaison all the time.
Think about sauté in third person.
Right.
I think I see it.
Because I'm sitting here saying to myself, what should I, but she's always encouraging me to be a mentor for folks. And I always say to her, I'm not into a formal relationship of mentoring because Carol and I, we never really had a formal relationship where she said, doggone it, I'm gonna be your mentor. It was just kind of, we worked together. She brought me to the party and it was enough said. It was kind of like enough said. And I got your back. I ain't gonna let nobody walk over you, but at the same time, you're gonna have to learn how to fight too, And so that being said, I guess the first thing that I try to teach folks that are working on my team is that you have to understand your budget. Budget is everything. Most Black folks, our weakness is that we don't really understand numbers. And that, it's just too crucial not to. That's number one. Number two, you have to give people windows of opportunity because we don't always get the opportunity to show ourselves in our best light. What do I mean by that? Well, let's look at the NFL. There's no question there should be more Black head coaches. But they always say, well, when we have an opening, there's no Black coaches that are offensive coordinators or defensive coordinators to choose from. Well, there are no offensive defensive coordinators because you don't have a whole bunch of Black position coaches that are ready to move into that lane, right? They don't have enough experience. So it's kind of the Rooney rule that I've adopted. And what I've done is I've tried to create.
What's the Rooney rule?
So the Rooney family, who owned the Pittsburgh Steelers, implemented a rule that for every head coach vacancy, you had to have a minimum of one African American in the final 3 or 4 to interview, regardless if that individual had coordinator experience or not. So you had a lot of position coaches now getting an opportunity to interview for head coaches positions just because of the Rooney rule. So what I've done is I've taken some special assignment opportunities and I opened it up for anyone who thought they could handle it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
did a rotation of about 3. And whether you literally were working the front desk or you were a manager or an executive,
Yeah.
you could compete to be part of this 3-person rotation.
Yeah.
And it was working directly with me in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that gave people an opportunity to experience the president's office, and
Yeah.
B, kind of stretch themselves if they were interested in growing. And that's something that I've learned, is that no matter how, deep you are into what you're doing as a president or CEO or leader, you always got to take time to kind of open the door for someone else to come through.
Yes. Yeah. I know that's not always everybody's proclivity, let's say. I do understand, mentoring, sponsoring has a certain weight to it. I really do understand that. I myself, when I've noticed a gap in my, capabilities, finance was one at a job before where I was like, man, I don't really understand how this P&L works. And I want to have that conversation. So I kind of cozied up beside our CFO at the time, or the guy running finance for that particular business unit, and made the explicit request, like, hey, can I, just run my slide decks by you on a quarterly basis, and maybe could you give me a little insight on some of these numbers when they get reported out? And so sometimes I coach people in that way, to just say, sometimes you need to make the initiative to go see and frame it in a way that fits other folks' schedule and their own personality, because not everybody wants to, has the time or the inclination to do that kind of thing.
Right.
But I guess we would undeniably say mentoring is important at the same time.
And sometimes you get some of us, man, that aren't interested in mentoring us.
I know.
Let's get that straight.
Yeah. So what about that there? So, I've started the conversation around some of this idea. I think I came across somebody at which bank? There was one of these banks that had like an urban development guy, black man, that made some quip about, he can't write a check in San Diego because he doesn't know who to give it to, and which was trying to characterize Black San Diego as a little fragmented and lacking some leadership, was what I received that to me. What's your sense about that? Do you kind of allude to it when you say that sometimes Black folks don't want to mentor other Black folks or work together. Do you have evidence of that being different?
Well, I always like to keep these kind of interviews positive. I'll just say we have a long way to go as people. I've seen the good and the bad in both sides of the fence, right? And I've been in both environments, working in both environments. So I think you're gonna find folks on both sides of the fence, doing good and bad things.
I think I'm asking bright spots. I think on the optimism, I am truly asking you, do you have examples or things where you've seen Black folks come together and do things that are like okay.
Well,
in San Diego.
So, Boulé is one. I really enjoy being around those men. I think they mean well. We get along well. For the most part, we're like-minded. So I would say Boulé. I'm working with a group right now, which is a loosely formed group of African-American leaders in San Diego. And we have launched a 100-day plan aimed at the new mayor, Todd Gloria. When he came in the office, we kind of shared this vision. We've been on the Zoom calls, meeting with the local council members, the supervisors, et cetera, and pushing that agenda.
Now, so now you're gonna make me stop. But how have we not talked about this?
Because I told you the most powerful folks you ain't gonna ever hear about, partner.
No, I mean, how have we not talked about it right now? Because if you have a 100-day plan,
because man, we don't have. I'm trying to stay on your time frame. You listen all night. No, man, I'll be honest. It's so much. I mean, we haven't even talked about the San Diego Foundation Advisory Group that you know, we're a part of. And, I mean,
Yeah, I heard about that. So is this I heard about this pillar. There's a new kind of Black centered lane that the foundation has announced. I saw a little press around that. So,
so they have a fund. They have a fund that is aimed at the African American community in San Diego, and I think they have 4 pillars. Housing. I always miss one. Housing, entrepreneurship, employment, and which one am I missing?
Education.
Education.
Got it.
And we're on the subcommittee for employment.
Got it. My goodness. I mean, and I'm seeing similar movement in the biotech front too. There are leaders here in town that have access to dollars that are really starting to kind of put some push behind the situation, you know, for Black folks in this country, period. You know, there's sometimes I've been down in Little Italy and watched that environment become such a kind of burgeoning area of, you know, vibrant commerce and all of it, whether it's housing or restaurants, or eateries, outside stuff, entertainment. And I know that I came across some sort of economic development survey for doing a similar thing. I don't know what you call it, you know. It's not called Little Africa, but it's called Little Black something, you know, in some part of San Diego, where you can recognize and do the same thing. Because you go down to Little Italy, you see all the Padres players of Italian descent. I mean, how we in every city in this country don't have a similar center that can celebrate and call out the contribution of Black folks from everything from finance to baseball. Like, how is that possible?
So they have it in cities like Atlanta, DC, and all that, because you got Black folks that are in power, right? And so they're creating policy, and they're you know, they're the police chief, they're the fire chief, they're the city manager, they're the mayor, right? So part of this is understanding how systems work. And then carrying out a strategic plan that just puts you in the game. Not saying it takes over, not trying to take over, but we should have a larger voice in kind of how policy is created. I think you'll have a better result on the back end.
So towards that end, in the 100-day plan, were you to be in Todd's ear, which I hear that you are.
Well, I'm not. That's the point. I'm not in Todd's ear, you know. So but that's another Oprah show.
The Donahue, or maybe some other one of those talk shows. So not to wade too far in that water, but were it you, let's say, from a policy perspective in San Diego, what things do you think are near-term opportunities that we could do in San Diego to move the needle on some, you know, not that we can become Atlanta tomorrow, but we are on a similar, you know, parallel in the country. I don't know, we're on a similar critical mass, but what do you think is possible from a policy perspective in San Diego for Black folks?
Well, number one, they're hiring a new diversity and inclusion officer right now. It's on the street. We need to do all we can to make sure that they're seeing candidates that are like-minded. In the next 2 or 3 years, they're going to be hiring a new police chief. You know, again, we need to do all we can to make sure we're bringing candidates forward that represent our interest. They're going to be hiring a new chief operating officer. We, again, just need to do all we can to make sure. And then the final thing is, you know, in Black San Diego and in Black America, we need to stop giving away our vote. And I've been very, very clear about that. We will, and I get it. Sometimes you vote for a candidate that you like, or you think, you know, blah, blah, blah. But the bottom line is you got to ask that candidate to do something for the community that you live in or you care about. And we have to hold these politicians accountable.
I'm really, you know, I've heard that my man A guy I grew up with, works on the East Coast and does a lot around census and these kinds of things, encouraging Black folks to participate in the system. And you have similar resistance like you do to, like, you know, vaccine hesitancy or whatnot, you know, when you have a history of marginalization and the complete lack of, you know, representation. It's sometimes hard to convince people to go down to the polling place or go, you know, get involved in a system that for so long has felt diametrically opposed to your existence. So, you know, those of us that have been able to carve out a lane or find some space, I feel like, you know, the onus is on us to continue to help coach folks in that direction, to create greater levels of representation on like policy fronts and other places. But as I say that, I also get why people don't do it. You know, I do understand why folks are like, you know, there's nothing for me in there. It's hard sometimes. Hey, look, we're at 5 minutes to the hour. I said I wouldn't keep you more than about an hour. You've been very gracious with your time and your opinion. I appreciate it from the heart. It's nice to just meet you personally. And Shante, thank you for brokering this conversation. I really, really appreciate that. And
I'll let Art Flippin know we finally connected. He's always asking. So, you know, I appreciate you and thank you for your time. And,
yes,
you know, again, I look forward to the piece coming together and seeing
yes,
what's going to materialize from all of this.
Yes, me too. You know, to be continued, let's say, because I think all these threads will converge. So I appreciate you walking with me.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
I appreciate you, man. Let's stay in touch. All right, sir.
For sure. Have a great day. All right.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right. Bye
Thank
now.
you, Shante.